Let's start without pretending. Some of you are exhausted. I know I am. Not the cute kind of tired that can be fixed with a weekend retreat and a green juice. I mean ground down, worn thin, numb in places that used to feel electric. You've done the healing work. You've read the books. You've tried to be spiritual about it. You've tried to be positive. You've tried to be grateful. And still, something inside you feels scorched. Good. It's not a failure. That's raw material. Punk magic is not for the pristine. It's not for the perfectly aligned. It's not for the aesthetically curated witch with matching altar cloths and social media strategy. Punk magic is for the ones who have been chewed up by systems, relationships, expectations, institutions, and their own impossible standards, and are still here. If you are broken, you're still powerful. If you're burnt out, you are combustible. The why is what we are talking about today. Burnout is friction between your inner currents and the machine you've been plugged into. Most people burn out because they have been living against their own signal, working jobs that drain them, performing identities that don't fit, carrying emotional loads that were never theirs, trying to be good enough for structures that don't actually value them. The system feeds on your compliance and calls it maturity. It feeds on your silence and calls it professionalism. It feeds on your self-erasure and calls it kindness. Eventually, your nervous system says no. Burnout is your body staging a revolt. From a punk magic perspective, that revolt is sacred. You are not malfunctioning, you are just resisting. The problem is that modern spirituality often tries to sand down that resistance. It tells you to raise your vibration when you are furious. It tells you to surrender when you are being exploited. It tells you to forgive and release, and something in you knows you need to confront, not dissolve. Punk magic does not neutralize your anger, it weaponizes it. To be honest, when you're broken, the illusion cracks. You see through things you used to believe in. You stop trusting narratives that once comforted you. You start noticing how much of your life has been shaped by other people's expectations. That cracking hurts. It destabilizes identity. It makes you question everything. But magic begins where certainty ends. When you are broken, your boundaries are porous. The old version of you is dissolving. The ego shell has fractures in it. Through those fractures, something else can move. Most people rush to repair the shell. They want to get back to normal. They want to feel like themselves again, and that's understandable. But what if the self that broke was the problem? Punk magic does not rush to rebuild the same structure that collapsed. Rather, it asks, what wants to be born through the rubble? You don't fix a burned out life by returning to the conditions that burned you. You don't heal by becoming more palatable. You heal by becoming more real, and real is rarely tidy. Punk culture always took what was discarded and turned it into power. Safety pins as jewelry, ripped clothes as armor, noise as music, refusal as identity. Punk magic does the same. Your shame becomes fuel. Your anger becomes current. Your disillusionment becomes clarity. The parts of you that polite society told you to suppress, the intensity, the obsession, the darkness, the refusal to smile when you don't feel like it, these are not defects, they are unrefined energies. The broken and burned out often have one thing in common. They cared too much, they gave too much, they tried too hard. That's voltage, not weakness. You just didn't know how to direct it. The punk magic teaches you to stop bleeding energy into systems that don't honor you. It teaches you to reclaim your attention, your desire, your time, and your narrative. And it begins with a simple, radical shift. You stop trying to be saved. When you're burned out, it's tempting to look for a savior, a teacher who will fix you, a method that will reset you, or a community that will validate you. Be careful. There's nothing wrong with learning from others. In fact, it can be quite vital and immensely empowering. But remember that you are not a project to be managed. You are not a student waiting to be completed. You are a living current that has been misdirected. The moment you realize that no guru is coming to rescue you is the moment you reclaim authority. Authority is ownership. You start to ask what you actually want instead of why you should. And that question alone can destabilize an entire life, because often what you want contradicts what you've built. You might want rest, not productivity. You might want intensity, not balance. You might want solitude, not constant connection. So practically speaking, when you are burned out, your energy is low, but your emotional charge is high. That's a volatile mix. Traditional ritual that requires elaborate preparation can feel impossible. You don't have the bandwidth for ornate ceremony. Good. Strip it back. Sit on the floor. No incense, no robes, no performance, just you and the truth of how you feel. Name what burns you. Not abstractly, specifically. This job drained me, or this relationship diminished me, or maybe this belief kept me small. Speak it aloud. Language is a blade, it cuts through vagueness. Then ask yourself the question, what part of you agreed to that? This is not about self-blame, it's about power retrieval. Somewhere you tolerated what scorched you. Somewhere you believed you had to. Somewhere you traded authenticity for safety. Find that contract and then revoke it. You don't need Latin. You don't need a circle cast in chalk. You need clarity and will. Like, I no longer agree to abandon myself for approval, or I no longer agree to silence my anger to keep the peace. Maybe I no longer agree to overwork myself to prove my worth. Say it until your body believes it. This is punk magic. Broken and burned out people often live in survival mode, hypervigilant, overextended, bracing for the next impact. Survival mode narrows perception. It focuses on immediate threat. It keeps you reactive. Sovereignty widens perception. It focuses on choice. It makes you proactive. So the shift from survival to sovereignty is not gentle. It requires you to stop defining yourself by what happened to you. You are not your trauma. You are not your exhaustion. You are not your collapse. These are events, not identity. And punk magic insists that you claim authorship again. If you are writing the next chapter of your life, what changes? Do you quit something? Do you confront someone? Do you dismantle a persona that has been suffocating you? These are not comfortable questions, they are destabilizing, but stagnation is worse. Burnout is stagnation with a fever. Here's a truth that most people avoid. Burnout can be an initiation. In traditional initiatory systems, something must die. An identity, a role, a belief. The initiate descends, is stripped, is disoriented. Then they return changed. Modern life gives you the descent, but never frames it as initiation. It calls it failure, breakdown, crises. What if you reframe it? What if your exhaustion is the threshold? What if the version of you that cannot continue like this is not weak, but done? Initiation is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's the quiet realization that you refuse to keep living the way you have been. Punk magic does not wait for a ceremonial badge. It marks the shift internally. You decide that the old life is over. You decide that the old rules no longer apply. You decide that your energy is too precious to be spent on things that hollow you out, and that decision alone changes your trajectory. After the burn comes the rebuild. This is where many people slip back into the old patterns. They rebuild something that looks different but is structurally identical. New job, same self-abandonment. New relationship, same overgiving. New spiritual path, same dependency. Magick rebuilds from principle, not appearance. The principle is simple. Nothing that costs you your core is worth maintaining. If a situation requires you to mute your truth, it's too expensive. If a dynamic requires you to shrink, it's too expensive. If a belief requires you to betray your instincts, it's too expensive. You begin designing a life that supports your nervous system instead of assaulting it. That might mean less income, but more autonomy. It might mean fewer friends, but deeper honesty. It might mean disappointing people who preferred you compliant. So be it. You cannot heal while performing. You cannot regenerate while constantly proving yourself. Refusal is holy. In a world that demands your constant participation, saying no is revolutionary. No to overwork. No to emotional labor you didn't sign up for. No to spiritual bypassing. No to narratives that frame your anger as immaturity. Refusal creates space. Space creates possibility. When you stop pouring energy into what drains you, you will feel something unfamiliar. Silence. At first, it's uncomfortable. You've been used to constant noise, constant obligation. Silence can feel like emptiness, but stay with it. In that silence, your real desires start to surface. Not the ones you were trained to want, the ones that were buried. Punk magic is not about endless rebellion. It's about selective rebellion. You choose what you reject and what you build, and you do it consciously. Many broken people were told they were too much, too intense, too emotional, too sensitive, too demanding. So they learned to compress themselves. Compression leads to implosion. Burnout is often the result of chronic self-suppression. You are not too much. You are uncontained. Containment is different from suppression. Containment is self-directed. Suppression is imposed. So build your container. You channel your intensity into art, ritual, creation, strategy. You let yourself feel fully, but you decide where the energy goes. You stop apologizing for your depth. You stop trimming your edges to make others comfortable, not in a reckless way, in a sovereign way. The broken and burned out often live on the edge of patience, the edge of stability, the edge of giving up. The edge is not a curse, it's a threshold. On the edge, you can see clearly. There's no illusion of infinite tolerance left. You know exactly what you cannot endure anymore. And that clarity is power. Instead of fearing the edge, work with it. Ask yourself, what is this edge showing me? Usually, it reveals a boundary that has been ignored. Reinstate it. The moment you honor your own limit, something in you recalibrates. Self-trust returns. And self-trust is the foundation of all real magic. Without it, you are borrowing other people's frameworks. With it, you are generating your own. Punk magic for the broken and burned out is not about wallowing in pain, it's about using it. Ash is not useless, it fertilizes soil. It marks where something ended. It signals that transformation has occurred. But you don't live in the ashes. You build from them. Architecture implies intention. You design your life with the knowledge of what you can and cannot survive. You choose structures that support your autonomy. You create rituals that strengthen your spine, not just soothe your wounds. You become harder to exploit, not because you are cold, because you are awake. The world does not need more compliant mystics. It needs people who have seen the burn and decided not to go back to sleep. If you are broken, tell the truth about it. Not performatively, not for sympathy, but because honesty clears distortion. Say something like, I am tired of pretending this works for me, or I am angry that I accepted less, or I am scared to change, but I am more scared to stand still. Truth spoken without ornament is spellwork. It rearranges internal structures, it disrupts denial, it sharpens will. And the broken and burnouts have one advantage. They have nothing left to lose in terms of illusion. Use that. You do not need to be whole to be powerful. You need to be honest. Punk magic is forward-facing. It doesn't romanticize suffering. It doesn't glorify trauma. It recognizes them as catalysts. The future you build from this point will not be polite. It will not be perfectly balanced. It will not please everyone, but it will be yours. And that matters more than approval. The broken and burned out are often the ones who reshape culture because they have already experienced the cost of compliance. They know what it does to a soul. When you refuse to go back to that state, you become dangerous in the best possible way. Not violent, not chaotic, but ungovernable by narratives that diminish you. That is punk. That is magic. And that is where the real work begins. You are not finished. You are not ruined. You are at the point of ignition. Now, decide what you're going to set on fire and what you're going to build in its place.